The next one I want to tackle is Black Lives Matter. So I know with the US JED groups, there's been some discussion and different programs around this, especially last year, which is great. But I still think there are some misunderstandings about what Black Lives Matter is and what it's not. So the first thing is that even though it came to prominence maybe more globally last year, it's been around since 2013. And the movement was formed around the idea, or was formed in response to the acquittal of the man who killed Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, in 2013. And the goal of Black Lives Matter is it's a movement that wants to force institutions to be accountable for the ways in which they have continued the legacy of not seeing Black people as equal. So I have a couple of visuals that usually help this argument. So on the right side of your screen, you can see a top visual and a bottom visual. So the top visual is what people think Black Lives Matter is saying, right? So there are a lot of people who criticize it and say, oh, they're trying to say that Black lives are more important. They're trying to say that only Black lives matter. That's not what it is at all. The bottom is what Black Lives Matter is actually about. It's trying to say that with all other groups, we want Black lives to be as important and equally considered, respected, and valued as other groups. And the visual that I think is missing from this is, if there was a third one, the reality for Black Lives Matter is that all the other groups are up here and Black lives would be a fist down here. And what we're asking for is this gap to be closed so we can all matter together, not to go over, but to be equal. And so one of the challenges in Japan with that is the terminology and the phraseology. I had a friend who last summer wrote a really good blog post about the actual wordage of Black Lives Matter. And traditionally, it was the translation was Black Lives, Kokujin no sei wa taisetsu, right? Black Lives Matter. But that's not the nuance. It didn't capture the full nuance. So what it captured is what you really need to say is Kokujin no sei mo taisetsu. And so they also matter. That's the crux of the issue. And one of the things that I've heard in the US-Japan community is that Black Lives Matter is political and nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to get involved. Nobody wants to say anything about it because they argue that it's political. And I would counter that argument and say it is not political, it is about people. Black Lives Matter is not for or against any political party. They don't endorse candidates. They don't tell people who to go out to vote for. They don't support the platforms of one group over another. They will go toe to toe and fight whoever they need to in order to advance the agenda of helping to make Black lives equal. And so it's really important in this community in particular, when people say that, they can't say anything because it's political, that is problematic and it's an obstacle to actual progress and change. And so with that comes something that also usually comes with this is the notion that all lives matter. Right? So when people say, well, we can't say that Black lives matter because all lives matter, which is true, right? All lives should matter. And the fact is that in the US context in history, all white lives have mattered as it relates to government and the police. But what Black Lives Matter is arguing is that that has not been true for Black people in the United States. And until the day that Black Americans are not being shot in their homes, in their street, in the cars, or just being pulled over for nonsensical reasons, or the day that we don't have to have the talk with our children about how to act in a situation so you don't get shot or arrested by the police, you cannot say that all lives matter in the eyes of our society. And I will say, as a person who identifies as Black in the United States, it's very hurtful when I hear people say that all lives matter, because the way that that lands on me is that you're telling me that my life is not as valuable as others. You're saying that other people's existence, you're not valuing my existence in the community or my contribution. So you have to be aware of how words, even if that's not your intention, it has the potential to land on people in that way. And so all of these things, racial groups, racism, Black Lives Matter, all of these things are part of this broader circumstance that we're talking about, which is racial justice, right? And so why is racial justice important? It's important because these systems, these interactions impact the daily lives and fortunes of people, right? And as the former ambassador that I sort of knew, Ambassador Roos, used to say that the connections between the people of America and Japan are strong, and they are the foundation of the relationship. And if we don't have relations where people are mutually respected and mutually recognized as valuable, then that foundation is not going to last. And it's not going to really be as strong as we want it to be. And so what I would say to all of you is that a person's demand for dignity and respect, that is not a political thing, but it is a prerequisite for a society that is just.